Welcome to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are more than just entertainment. They're a catalyst for meaningful conversations. I'm Jonathan Sprang. I go by Sprang. And most weeks we dive into movies to watch in preparation for a new release hitting theaters. But we don't stop there. We talk about the deeper lessons, the morals, and the values that you can find in these films. This week, we're talking about Bong Joon-ho movies in preparation for Mickey 17 hitting theaters this Friday. We talk about Memories of Murder, Snowpiercer, and Parasite, his Oscar-winning film. This is a great conversation with my brother-in-law, Kevin, and I, so we hope you enjoy. You can check out all of our links at bio.site/movies that make you. That's bio.site/movies that make you. It has our Instagram link, it has our YouTube link, and also our podcast links at Apple and Spotify. And you'll also find our Letterboxd link where you can find all of our lists, the movies that make you laugh, cry, or scream, and everything in between. Feel free to drop us a line on Instagram and let us know what movies have made an impact on your life. Before we get into this week's episode, though, let's take a look at the next 4 weeks on the Movies That Make You podcast. Next week, Kristen's going to be on the show. We're going to be talking about Spies and Soderbergh. That's in preparation for his new release, Black Bag. There's a couple, and they're married. One of them's a spy, one of them's an agent. So in preparation for that movie, we watched 2 movies where there's couples that are spies, and also we watched a couple Soderbergh movies, including Presence that was just released earlier this year. The week after that, the boys are going to be back. We're going to be having a kid edition talking about Snow White films. We watched 3 Snow White iterations in preparation for Disney's live-action remake. Even though they were a little hesitant at first, they enjoyed watching those films. The week after that, we're going to be talking about black-led horror films. A Woman in the Yard is going to drop in theaters that week, so we decided to talk about the top 10 black-led films that we've seen and how they've impacted us. The week after that, the boys are going to be back, and we're going to do a fun compilation of films in preparation for watching a Minecraft movie. It drops that week. We watched Pixels with Adam Sandler. We watched the Lego Movie with Chris Pratt. And we watched Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. Those 3 movies felt like they fell in the same genre, have the same kind of feel that they're going for with the Minecraft movie. Hope those episodes excite you. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast. We are back with another episode of the Movies That Make You podcast. And I am here with my brother-in-law and my really good friend, Kevin. What's up, brother?
How you doing? All's good here.
Good. Yeah, life's good here. I actually just got off a phone call with Jacob, so
Awesome.
That was kind of fun to kind
I'm
of
glad.
get that right before the podcast recording. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So we're prepping for Mickey 17, directed by Bong Joon-ho, and he directed 3 other movies that we watched in preparation for it. So we're gonna dive into those. Some of them were first time watch for me, and I think they were all first time watch for you.
All first time watch for me.
Yeah, so we're just gonna whatever we talk about happens. It's the first time we're talking about it, and we'll see where it leads. But yeah, so how's life going for you, buddy?
Life's good. Life's good. A little bit of business travel this past week. I spent the week in Seattle. It was good and bad. All went well. Glad to be home. Glad the weather's going to start warming up a little bit soon. But all good. Can't complain.
Yeah.
It wouldn't do any good anyway, and it would be disingenuous. I have nothing to complain about that's worth complaining about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, work had a work trip as well this time. I don't normally travel for work, but had an opportunity to go to some meetings. Actually, one big meeting is like a 4-hour meeting, just kind of sharing what our company does and how we do it well, to try and have this one other company use our business more than they use other people. So it was good, and it was kind of stressful leading up to it, but then it ended up being really fun once we got in the room and started talking. It was like, yeah, this is what I was hoping it would be. It's just sometimes it's stressful leading up to it because everybody wants it to be perfect, and so they have all their notes and all that stuff.
If you are solid in the mental plans, all the rest of them are like the 80-20 rule, right? If you're prepared, all the slides and things really, really don't matter as much.
For sure. The funny story for me was leaving on Tuesday. Weather was fairly nice, so I just had like a long sleeve T-shirt and a pair of jeans. And then getting back on Wednesday, when it was in the teens, I had to walk outside, and I was like, I'm gonna freeze. I'm gonna freeze if I go out like this. So I got in my suitcase and pulled out the other pair of pants I had, put those on top of the jeans, and then I had all 3 shirts on, like long sleeves and everything, and I made it. I was a little chilly, but I made it.
I hear you. Been there. Left here in April to go for a business trip, not really thinking about it much earlier in my career. Won't make the mistake again, but I was going to Montreal I mean, it was 85 degrees here. Narrator voice, it was not 85 degrees there when I got off.
Yeah. And I was going to Phoenix, so I was like, oh, warm to warm, it's gonna be great. It was 70s there. It was awesome. And not getting back. But we made it. So outside of the movies that we watched for this episode, are there any other movies of note that you've watched recently that you kind of were like, oh, that was awesome? Anything come to mind?
I haven't gone much, although yesterday I did go see the new Captain America movie, which I'm sure we'll talk about another time in more detail. But
Yeah.
I liked it. I had heard mixed things, but all in all, I liked it. It was, I don't know. I don't have, it wasn't ho hum. It wasn't
Right.
the best I've ever seen, but I certainly was not. I think it was much better than the previews led it to be, in my opinion.
Cool.
The deeper
Yeah.
story than the previews led you to kind of think.
Yeah. And we went and saw it as well. And that's kind of my take too. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And I felt like I teared up a couple times due to just the fact that he's Captain America and the struggle that he was
I think he did great.
communicating.
I think
Yeah.
that character
Acting was great.
development, and I think he did great. Honestly, my only negative thing to say about it, and it's not negative per se, but the super smart, super evil genius that we're all supposed to. I mean, look, the backstory of him and how he got to be that way, that's all great. But in my mind, I just keep expecting him to break out into Man of Constant Sorrow. From O Brother, Where Art Thou? I mean, there are some actors that, I mean, he was that and Buster Scruggs.
Yep.
And then supervillain. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Not that he did a bad job. It was just came in with that baggage.
It was really interesting too for me because too, like, kind of somewhat spoiler warning, but how much they used Incredible Hulk in that, which makes sense for the Thunderbolt Ross character. I mean, that's where we first met him, was Incredible Hulk. The relationship with his daughter I thought was really touching, like that whole like dynamic of him wanting to, earn her trust back. And I felt like that was all believable. I thought Harrison Ford did a really good job with what he was given.
I agree.
And I think the touching moments of that relationship that you get towards the end was really awesome. And I think, and the anger and all that stuff I think was believable. And I mean, I thought that the concept of what the villain was trying to do and how he was able to do it was like really like that's interesting. That's a interesting way to kind of get your evil plan to go off. So
no, I agree. And I will say that was actually part of the trepidation I had leading up to it is, again, spoiler alerts for everyone, but I don't think anyone that's going to see that movie that is familiar with the franchise is not aware of Red Hulk in the movie and who that person is. But part of my reaction going in was Harrison Ford's 187 years old. It doesn't seem very believable, but I will say that one of the most poignant moments was at the end when you see him as him again, and he's walking down the street and he looks 85 years old and frail. And that was perfect. It would not have worked if it had been someone who was in their prime who just became and then came back. It really did. The contrast was pretty deep. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool, man. Yeah, we watched that with the boys. We did watch a couple of the Marvel movies to prep for that one. And then we're in the middle of watching through some video game or somewhat to prep for Minecraft. We watched the Lego movie last night, which is not a video game, but it's the same kind of like build a thing, kind of like what Minecraft is. And then we're going to watch Free Guy tonight. And then we're going to watch Pixels with Adam Sandler.
Nice.
So that'll be like our
all good movies. All good movies.
Yeah. So we're kind of in the middle of that. It's kind of fun looking at all the plans and telling the boys, like, guys, like, the reason that we watch these movies, and we're going to watch movies anyway, but we got to watch them in a certain time frame to make them so we can have the podcast, and got to have something to talk about on the podcast. Even if we've seen it before, we got to watch it again because you can't really recall details from a movie you saw 2 years ago.
Not if you've only seen it once, right?
Exactly.
So I'm pretty sure you can recall quite a few details from a movie that you saw in the late 70s.
Yes. Yes.
Or a few of them.
Yeah, a few of them, right? And the other movie that came to mind the other night was Princess Bride, and I can almost
Hmm.
quote that entire thing. So
Yes.
so
By
good.
the way, that I am glad that I'm going to follow up with them. By the way, the
Yeah,
the Swedes that had never heard of it.
it's wild. Yeah.
Yep, definitely going to follow up with them on that.
Cool. Well, let's kind of jump into the movies that we prepped for this new Mickey 17. First one that he directed, Bong Joon-ho, was called Memories of a Murder.
Hmm.
And basically, I had no idea what it was going in except the tagline, of it. And basically, just kind of follows a detective story. There's a murderer going around, and a couple of the detectives are trying to solve it, and they kind of never do solve it, and it's kind of just left out there, and kind of yeah. But I feel like that was really, for me, it felt like Seven somewhat in that respect, just like the kind of there's these murders happening and cops trying to solve it, and I felt like the direction of the movie was really good. The acting was really good. So yeah, what are your initial thoughts about the film?
I could tell it was early in his career. I won't say I disliked it because that's not fair. I watched it to the end and I didn't have to pause it and come back to it or anything. I watched it straight through and I got what they were trying to do. And I did very much appreciate that type of story. The serial killer, like you said, like Seven, someone's toying with them, where the clues come from and how the story starts to come together is quite interesting. I very much appreciated that. There were some of the other dynamics that I think the knob was turned a little bit too high in some of the character traits,
Mm,
if you will.
sure.
It felt like a serious movie that really didn't know how to take itself as serious as it probably could, if that
Mm,
makes sense at all. But I assume we'll get to that. But I think you know what I'm talking about. And I'm sure this will be a theme through our discussion. But the class that people get put in, and for various reasons. In this particular
mm-hmm,
case, it was more about where you're from that
mm-hmm,
was really interesting to me, and it seems to be a theme I saw in different ways. But
yeah.
in this movie, that there's the country inept small town. We do things in a way that is so completely local and illogical and whatever. And then you've got that kind of contrasted with the city detective.
Mm-hmm,
And then even on top of that, everything that had to be done that was complex or advanced, they had to send to the United States. And they made
mm-hmm,
reference to the United States. So there were three very, and
mm-hmm,
I don't know how much of that was the director making a comment on how South Korea sees itself
yeah.
as, I don't know, but that was interesting to me that kept referencing the United States specifically.
Yeah, and that actually came up in Parasite as well a couple times, as kind of like a nod. So this movie, Memories of Murder, came out in 2003. I'd never heard of it
Me
ever
either.
until I looked the director up. He did win the Oscar for Parasite, which is his most recent film, and now Mickey 17. I did see Snowpiercer before, but I didn't necessarily put it together who the director was. I just
Mm.
saw Snowpiercer. I heard people said it was good. I saw it. Chris Evans, action. That sounds like fun. So I'd never like looked up this guy's career to know that this was his first film. And the actor, one of the main detective in it, also was in the Snowpiercer and Parasite, which is
Yes.
Song Kang-ho, and he plays the kind of the local detective. I thought it was really interesting that they're portraying him as he's just going to do what it takes to try and get the case closed. He's going
Yeah.
to plant
Yeah.
evidence, and
Just, yeah. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Just,
I
we're
just
going to
gotta
solve it.
we
Everybody's
got
going
to
to feel better.
yeah. And they try to lead, the first kid. They try to kind of like make him confess when he didn't do it, and almost beat him to try and get him to confess. And he was a mentally challenged person, I guess you'd say, and he was just he didn't do it. His father rescued him from that, and then the city detective came in and helped basically put them on the right track and pieced together that, oh, there's actually another murder that happened, and kind of saw the pattern for what it was, and then kind of worked together. And then by the end, though, you got the city detective that's actually gotten so emotionally involved and
Yes.
so frustrated by the whole thing that he's willing to do when he doesn't have the right evidence, he's still going to take
They
out his
actually
vengeance.
they almost completely flip
Yeah,
roles. I
yeah,
also thought it was fascinating that given that in that movie, almost every woman in that movie was of a particular class in life. They were either a prostitute or a housewife or a young girl, except for the other police officer, or
mm-hmm.
I guess I don't even know what her actual title
Right,
was. She could have been secretary, she could have been police officer, she could have, I don't know. But she was in the office and they discarded everything that she was
mm-hmm.
hired help, but she's the one that actually realized the most important piece
Mm-hmm.
of what they started to find out. So I thought that
Yeah,
was a very poignant nod to our culture may look at things this way, but maybe we should reevaluate.
yeah, and I think for me too, one of the other standouts for me was just I felt like the shots were really well done. It felt very much like it felt like a solid movie. It didn't feel like a first film to me. While there may have been things acting wise may have been turned up to a little too high, like you were saying. And that could be something that Korean film is. It
Maybe
has a little bit
that's
more
I
of
did. You're right. That's
that
possible.
extra, that kind of hanging on. I think you think about foreign films, 80s, 80s and 90s, and the actors may be a little bit more, you know, flamboyant, more bigger than life. And then they kind of, by the time we get to Parasite, the acting is very much down grounded and
Yes,
not over the top. While there's over the top things that happen, the acting and the portrayals are
that's
pretty
fair.
much,
I
yeah,
agree with that. And by the way, I did not know going in that it was the same actor. And so the
right.
order I watched them in was actually Snowpiercer first
Okay.
because it was the easiest to get to for what when I
Mm-hmm.
was traveling. And you couldn't tell much about his character there. I mean, he was dirty and it was, kind of dark and there was a lot of action. And then I watched Memories of Murder. And of course, he is the focal point for
Mm-hmm.
good or bad. And then when I watched Parasite last, I'm pretty sure that's the same. Yes, that's the same person. So then IMDb, it's like, oh, he was that guy in Snowpiercer too. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that
Yeah.
that was very cool. By the way, you're talking about the filming, the cinematography in the rice fields,
Mm-hmm.
especially the one toward the end when she's walking right near the factory and she gets attacked there, and you
Yeah.
see there's rain and it's blurry, but you can just make out a head popping up.
Yes.
And that was so well done.
Yeah. I
What they
agree.
did in the rice fields themselves, the way they choreographed that was very, very.
Yeah. The other shot that comes to mind after you saying that was when it's the two ladies walking past each other and you can see the killer is in the trees and it's panning back and forth between the two.
Trying to figure out
Yeah.
which one
Yeah.
am I going to take?
Yeah. That
The
was wild.
actual the love interest, however it was defined, of the main detective going one direction, and the middle
Mm-hmm.
school girl that was the personal connection with the city detective going the other direction. That was
Yeah, and it was. I mean, you get to the end. They think they have the killer. The DNA test comes back and says it's not conclusive. We can't tell you that this is the person. Like we said, the city detective kind of wanted to kill him anyway. He's like, no,
right.
I've got it figured out. He's got to die. He gets stopped. Not for. I mean, he shot at him, multiple times, and then gets stopped by the local detective. And then it cuts to years later and he's not a cop anymore and he's just some salesperson and sitting in the back of a truck or a van. He said, hey, pull over, and he goes and inspects that first kill site that we saw at the beginning of the movie. And then this kid walks up and says, oh, you're the second person to come see this spot this week. The other guy said he did something here, and can you tell me what he looks like? I mean, I thought that was just a really
Yeah, I
good,
thought
like,
that was great. And then at the end, it's just ordinary. Oh, it plays, I guess, also into the class a little bit.
mm-hmm,
He's super intelligent. He's running circles around them or thinking circles around them,
mm-hmm,
and they never even really talked about or thought about. He was either the really, really good looking guy with the super soft hands, or he was a person who was disfigured and mentally challenged, or there was,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end, the ordinary. It was very,
Yeah.
very poignant ending.
Yeah.
I liked the
Um,
ending.
I think the other poignant moment for me that shocked me was the kid getting run over by the train. Like I
Yes,
did not. I mean, that came out of nowhere. It was heartbreaking, because they blamed this kid at first, so they're beating him, trying to get him to confess. He didn't do it, um, and then they're trying to save him in this particular point, and he ends up running away and kind of getting in his head, getting confused, and standing on a train track. They're trying to save him, and just right. I mean, just crazy, crazy. Oh, and then the other guy lost his leg because he got stabbed in a fight,
right.
and I mean, it's
Out
just
of all
like,
of them, that one didn't upset me.
sure,
He had something coming. He had some
yeah,
comeuppance somewhere.
yeah, for sure,
I will say the influence of martial arts in that, and some
yeah,
of especially that particular actor, and going from sitting just like this to in one motion stand up, leap over the desk, and kick somebody in the chest. I don't
yeah.
know how that was done.
Yeah, that is a great point. I mean, I think it's our cop shows don't have our martial arts isn't a big part unless it's a martial arts film. They aren't. That's not how our cops fight in our films in America. But it makes complete sense that that's how they learn to fight in that country, and so their cop fights are gonna be a little bit more martial arts looking. But yeah, I thought that all of the, I mean, even just the way that they were able, like, they get in a fight and just kick somebody in the head or something, like it just looks like natural, like it was just, this is just a natural part of who we are, and it was so, like, it didn't feel out of place at all. And I think that one shot where you're talking, where he double kicks the guy in the chest, like I
Yeah,
was not
like
expecting that at all.
how did you manage to get
Yeah,
from here to there?
yeah, it was wild. It was wild. So overall, kind of like, I think, anything else about the movie that you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so. To me, the plot of the story was a solid A minus, probably.
Mm-hmm.
The acting and the characters and the overall direction of the characters, if I look at it through my lens, not trying to guess what Korean film is like in that time period, that's probably a C minus or a D for some of the aspects of it. The plot of the story was really good. I really liked it. The cinematography, or the filming, like we talked about, I think some of the shots were amazing. They were A
Yeah,
plus. So
yeah.
all in all, I give it a B. And I guess
Okay.
that's probably about what the Metascore was, 82, I think, or something
Yeah,
like that. And so, all right. So probably so. It's probably not one I watch again, but it's certainly not one that I am. It's not, well, there's 2 hours and 12 minutes I won't get back, or whatever it was.
yeah, yeah. I feel kind of the same way. I think I gave it a 4 on Letterboxd. I think 4 out of 5. And it's, for me, it's just kind of wild because 2003, I was trying to think like movies that I would have seen in the States um, around that time. I mean, it's post Matrix. 2003, we saw Matrix 2, Matrix
Mm.
Reloaded. We're seeing Star Wars, so we're seeing all these big, these big blockbusters that are hitting. And this film, I feel like, as far as, like I said, the cinematography, the look of the film, I thought stands up against all American films too. As far as its style, I felt like it felt like a really good, like I said, Seven. It kind of felt like that to me, and I was just, it
I can
makes
see
it
that.
it makes it makes I guess for me watching that, I know why he got more opportunity,
Right.
because
The
that's
action
really,
sequences are
yeah,
wonderfully done.
yeah,
The chase scenes outside.
mm-hmm.
I mean, there are things that are very, very well done. Like I said, that, like, just maybe I was a little too harsh.
Oh no, you're good.
No, but the characters themselves were about 130% of what they should have been, I
For
think.
sure, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, yeah, solid movie. You give it a B, I give it a 4 or 5. So kind of in the same boat, but and I wouldn't not necessarily watch it for itself again. I think the only other time I might watch it would be if I wanted to share, if someone wanted to, watch something that was a foreign film. I would suggest this one. I think it's good enough that someone who's looking for something unique and different would still find this one very enjoyable. And yeah,
All right. Fair enough.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so Snowpiercer, I think was like I said, the first movie I ever saw of his, and you said you watched that one first also.
I did.
So you want to give a little rundown of Snowpiercer? Or you want me to?
That's fine. You can fill in the blanks.
Okay.
I'm new at this, so you can fill in the blanks. So climate change, global warming, there's a solution comes up. They find a solution they believe, and they across the world inject something into the atmosphere, a solution that's going to cool down the, and it does exactly that and completely freezes it. So everything dies except for anyone that was able to escape onto this high-tech, luxurious train that we find the backstory out about later, that it encircles the globe and it is self-sufficient. And so as long as people are on that train, they can survive. But outside of that train, the cold will kill you. And the premise is that it is just very on the nose, in a not a bad way, on the class of the first class is up in the front of the train, and the further back in the train you go, the lower your ticket is, and then it's a no. We'll talk about what it means, but it's very much a metaphor for society and a whole lot of other things. It is definitely a more recognizable film, if you will, because it was an American film. So Chris Evans playing the lead is a little different than it being a foreign film with subtitles and such. So I'll stop there. What did I miss?
Yeah. No, you got it right. Like that's the setup. That's what we get. They're trying to get to the front of the ship, the front of the train, to put a stop to this evil, sinister, train director, train conductor, and try to bring balance. That's a phrase they keep saying. The back of the train, balance looks differently than what they say balance looks like at the front of the train, and they want to equalize everybody. And so they're trying to get to the front of the train, no matter what it takes. They're trying to rescue kids because their kids are getting taken, and they don't know why they're getting taken. So they're trying to rescue the kids, and that's why they have to try and get to the front of the train to find one of the lady's sons. And yeah, that's kind of sets up the film. What's her Tilda
Swinton.
Yeah, Tilda Swinton.
By the way, I knew she was in the movie.
Unrecognizable. Yeah.
Completely unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Then I went back and I was forgetting that she was in the movie. And then even when I watched the last movie, Parasite, and I'm going through, oh, that's the same actor. I wonder if anybody else was the same. No. But they're like, oh, yeah, Tilda Swinton was in that. Wait. Okay, I guess. But no, I had no, it never crossed my mind that that's who that character was.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool.
Mason, I think, or something like that.
Yes, Minister Mason. She was basically the voice of the conductor. She was the one that sounded like she was in charge and giving all the orders to everybody, but she was all at the mercy of the train.
Yeah, she was the White House press correspondent, or
there you go,
whatever, basically.
Yeah. Other guy that was in it, Jamie Bell plays Edgar. Chris Evans plays Curtis Everett, and they had this unique connection. They just seemed like they were buds. But later we find out that they're not just buds.
By the way, of all, I mean, you knew that there was going to be a twist at some point. You spend the whole movie getting to the front. What was it going to be? By the way, should we give a spoiler?
Yeah,
I guess everybody would know if they're watching this. We're talking about the movies.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, they're working their way to the front. What's it going to be? Is it AI? Is it a Wizard of Oz moment? You have somebody who's frail and decrepit and using smoke and mirrors, and you find out that it's a guy. But that whole origin story that the Chris Evans character gives in explaining that all going together was one of the more, it was, you mentioned Seven earlier.
Yeah.
It was kind of that level of
Yeah. Like
what a depth that I didn't know was there.
Exactly. Like you aren't expecting it because, hey, this is an action movie, but it's an action movie that's also, like you said, commenting on society and showing the disparity between the most wealthy and the most poor, and there's something wrong with that. And it's definitely pointing the finger at it's you're just literally using our children for tools to make yourself more rich or make yourself more.
I thought it was very, very poignant, the perspective from each, that I'm look at everything you're getting because of the benevolence of what we're doing. For that to happen, this has to happen. It makes perfect sense without even, I heard a quote once that said, what was it? Equality to the privileged, equality feels like oppression, or something. It was something to that effect.
Yeah, I've heard that quote. Yeah.
And this falls. I mean, that describes pretty much the upside down perspective, because it was very much, there's an order to things, and you need this many people here and this many here and this many here, and if everybody is up front, then there's no way it's sustainable. And I really believe that we have a lot of people generally in the front of the proverbial train in our societies that feel exactly that way. Well, this makes sense. I mean, it's the way it has to be. But they made he asked a very deep question. Would you trade with anyone back there? Because anybody back there would trade with you. Right. So.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Ed Harris, when we were talking about the big reveal at the end, or the depth there, it tied back to so many little things that as you're watching the movie, I'm knowing they're going to explain this at some point, but I can't be a leader. I have two good arms. I can't be a leader. And you're like, well, what does that possibly mean? And you find out later.
Yeah. Yeah. That speech and that kind of origin story beautifully spells out. And then you're seeing there's so many people why are there so many people that are missing limbs and things like that? And the one older guy that's missing multiple limbs because he's made that sacrifice for people to be survived. I mean, the one line in that, I hate myself because I know that babies taste better. Like, that was just, whoa, that was just a wild thing that you just wouldn't hear in a normal situation. But it made sense, like, in the context, and you hear about that in other stories where you get to the point where it's like, we have to survive somehow, and they have to find something to give them protein, and it's that.
But then finding out that even though it's easy in a moment, to, when you're desperate, to justify whatever to survive, there's another way that you just haven't thought of yet. That means, what are you willing to sacrifice to do that? And that, anyway, it was really, I thought that story, while it took a little while, I think, to kind of get rolling. I really did enjoy the story. I thought the whole progression through the train, finding the different pieces, the oohs and ahs of the people that were running along, or running as part of it, then not knowing any of that was there. That was all interesting, disturbing. There were so many different things that came up out of that.
Yeah,
but that the majority of the people that were living in comfort had no idea of the atrocities going on behind, or how the whole thing worked. And I thought that was really deep when you consider that's where most of the people that are probably going to watch this podcast probably would end up somewhere in that section of the train, in the middle. And not realize that's the section of the train they were in.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit, there's another one called the can't remember the name of it now that I'm trying to say it. It's not the elevator, the lift.
The lift, or it had to do with levels. I've seen it.
The floor,
and
it's the same thing. Like the top of it's got food enough for the entire whatever building. It starts at the rich, and they can eat what they want, and then when they're done, they have a certain time limit, I think, and then it goes down, and then the people that are the poorest get the least, like, get the scraps of whatever's left over once it goes down.
And they're appreciative for anything that falls down there.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones at the top don't even pay attention that there's others below
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're
The platform. That's what it is. The platform.
yes, I
Yeah.
have seen it. It's been a long time, but yes.
Yeah. It reminded me of that, like just a very, like you said, on the nose. We're talking about class. I think you said it well, like in Memories of Murder. They also were commenting on class in a different way, like how you perceive someone because if they're from a certain place, they're this or they're that. And it's like, no, it was just a normal person that was actually the killer. And you didn't have your eyes open for a normal person. You were looking for the extremes and the way that city and more the culture rural people think about crime or think about detective work. It wasn't as on the nose. This one's directly on the nose, but in a fantastical way, in a way that allows you to, like a lot of good sci-fi, allows you to comment on our society now because it's in a futuristic world where it's really, really clearly defined what those classes are and what those benefits are. So you can point to that and say, yeah, where would you be on that? And how does that hit you, knowing where you were? And would you still do the same if you knew what it cost the people behind
Exactly.
you?
I mean, you have the heroes in
Mm-hmm.
the back of the train. You have the villain and the
Mm-hmm.
spokesperson of the villain and the hench woman of the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Still not sure. I'm still trying to process that character. I'm still not
Right.
quite sure how that character fits, but that's up at the front of the train. And then you don't ever talk about the people that they pass through. They're not part of anything really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
they eat steak and they enjoy things, or there's rumor of what they enjoy, but they don't play an active role in the story.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones, I guess, in I don't know, without being too philosophical, I think they're the ones that the whole story actually is centered around. The main point of the story is that they were oblivious to everything that was going
Yeah.
on because they were worried about only whatever was right in front of their face. It didn't matter where it came from. It didn't matter who did or didn't have that. It's like and they were very well taken care of. But it was, even when the mutiny or whatever made its way through them, most of them were drunk or stoned or just watched them go by, and
Mm-hmm.
until somebody actually took something from them, or their drug in that particular case, until that
Mm-hmm.
happened, nobody had even acknowledged that there was anyone there or anything else going on.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really accurately
Mm-hmm.
portrayed. Well, if it doesn't affect me, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
That can hit.
that to me was, the more I watched it, I thought that was a very deep movie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think some of the acting and some of the story it was an action movie, and in and of itself, it held up that it was an
Mm-hmm.
action movie. But I think it was its most important pieces were between the lines, and it did that very, very well.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to mention one quick thing. Song Kang-ho, who was the main actor in Memory of Murder, also the main actor in Parasite, played basically the locksmith of the film. He had he knew how to get through all the gates so that they could go from car to car. That was played a great, like, just little side character, but also had a lot of gravitas, in the moments. The other thing I thought was interesting too was that they got through about halfway, and it kind of like, I looked at the time on the movie just because I was trying to get all the movies in a short amount of time, and we were almost done, like 30 minutes left in the film, and we were just halfway through the train, which, because that was, like you said, like they were kind of just, the middle of the train wasn't necessarily the focus they were trying to get, so they kind of revealed all the pieces, and then it was really cool to kind of see the visuals of the other train cars, and
Yes,
they just kind of
the
went through those really
orchards and the
quickly. Yeah.
aquariums, and yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
agree.
was fun. The aquarium was by far the coolest looking train car. And then they're like, "You want some sushi?" And they all got one piece of sushi. And then they made her
Served
eat
twice a year.
the bug protein bar,
Yeah,
the bug
oof,
bar.
yeah, that was rough. So I do have two more small things. One, I know it was an American film, but I would say that it was very interesting that, of note, there were a few people of color that were played very important roles. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, the entire train was white American, except for the smartest person, who was the one who understood how all of the gates worked and could get them
Mm-hmm.
forward, who was Asian, and then his daughter, who was born on the train. There was very, very little diversity of characters in this story, whether that was an intentional commentary or just because it was an American movie and they didn't really want to dive into that. Maybe a little of both. I don't know. Considering that at the time I knew of the movie, I didn't realize that it was a Korean or non-American director.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe I should interpret that as more the deeper meaning of it. It was, but we're talking about the haves,
Mm-hmm.
or the super elite, the haves and the have-nots, and we're talking about the challenges they face, and good and bad and different. And oh yeah, everyone who's then not an American pretty much died. In other words, when we're arguing about our struggles in our classes here, we have very little perspective on what that really would mean elsewhere else.
Yeah.
I happen to have traveled quite a bit, so maybe that's why that jumped out to me. But it was, whether it was intended or not, it was very, very strongly not worded,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
And you had I was just going to say you had another point too.
My second one was just the very end. What did you think of the ending?
I was shocked. I'd seen it before, but I had forgotten what happens. And I thought trying to blow the gate off to get out of the train, that causing an avalanche that caused the train, every car to be thrown off the tracks. Like, did you just kill all of humanity? That was what was going through my head. And then I think they also commented on it earlier that he actually had he said, we've passed that train, we passed that plane many years, and now we're seeing more of the plane that we didn't see before. That means that the ice is melting and all that stuff. And then so those few people stepping off, I guess it was just the daughter, right?
Just the daughter and then the son,
The
which
son,
that
yeah.
was where I had a problem.
Okay.
Because neither one of them had ever been off the train. So they were both train kids. So the humanity died because you are in the middle of, I don't care that it's getting warmer, you're still snow, and yes, there was a polar bear. So you became polar bear food, and that's kind of how humanity ended. So that was my point. It was okay that if they didn't say they survived or died, you're kind of left. But to me, that was, if they were trying to send a hopeful message at all, that to me there really wasn't one there.
Yeah.
You had somebody who had any skills whatsoever survived, then I can extrapolate. But other than that,
Yeah. I guess
probably.
I just read into that as being, it's a sci-fi, futuristic, somewhat fantasy film, he's trying to say humanity survived, and we kind of throw some of those logistics out of the way because, hey, the young walked off the train, so there's hope. I don't know.
Maybe. Okay. maybe my cynicism.
But it's a good.
Everything else was very,
Yes, yeah.
very well thought out. Although I do think that you brought up a good point there right at the very end, is blowing up the door to get off of the train. If we make the train the metaphor that it is, how do you read into that what it would mean? I mean, does it, if you upset the balance that is there, is terrible as it is, what
are you left with?
That's probably reading too deep, but
I don't know.
It is an interesting question. If the whole thing is a metaphor, then where does the metaphor stop and it just becomes science fiction?
Right. I mean, I don't think that I don't think it's too far of a jump to say that that's what's happening. If you upset the train, you upset the system, it could all fall apart, and you're left with nothing, and literally nothing, and you're just wandering around without anything to save your life. So
yeah, I don't know.
Pretty wild.
Yep.
So the last one that we watched for the movie is Parasite. This is an Oscar-winning movie. I think he won Best Director for it as well. But just a really, really talk about class. We've already talked about it with the first two films. Class plays a big role in this movie. It's a family that's living in the slums of that town. They actually have to very very art poetically have to go down all the stairs, and that plays into it later. They have to go down all the steps of the city to get to their apartment. They are poaching Wi-Fi. They're poaching telephones. They have nothing of their own to have to offer society at all. They are basically just mooching. They're parasites. They're mooching off everybody else. They end up getting this kind of interesting jobs by basically conning this one family and doing things to make positions at the household become open so that they can promote the other family members. So all four family members, one's a tutor. That's the first thing, and then the girl becomes the art tutor, and then the father becomes the driver, and the mom becomes the housemaid. And they're all kind of working for this family. You think it's going a certain way. Yeah, they're okay. Now they're at the house. The families go away on vacation, and they're gonna just kind of take over the house and all this stuff. And then something really crazy happens, that there's another person living in the house in the hidden basement below the basement. That throws a whole wrench in their plans. And then the family comes back early, and they've got to try and get out and all that stuff. And then they end up having a birthday party at the end and invite all the family ends up getting invited, but it's just part of their job. This isn't a friendly thing. You're just doing your job. And then it ends up killing the father of the family and then escaping, and other people, get away. But then at the end, he went down in that sub basement and hid out there for 5 years. And the son is hoping to buy the house when he gets older. Doesn't. At the end of the movie, it's just a fantasy at that point still. So that's kind of a quick rundown of the movie. And what's your first thoughts on how the
Well, I
how the
love the
movie
way
hit
you
you?
actually set up the very beginning of their class and their place. The visual of them having to go down all of those stairs, their place in society is literally and figuratively at the bottom of society.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful way that they illustrated that. But I think it's very important that they're there. Circumstances have put them there, but the son, who kind of gets this all rolling as a tutor, is extremely intelligent. The
Mm-hmm.
daughter, who is a completely different type of intelligence, but her artistic ability also extremely intelligent. Father, very good with people. All of this family has amazing skill sets. And the only reason that they are not able to use those skill sets to manifest something positive is they don't have the money to get started. They can't afford college for the son or for the daughter, art school for the daughter. They have tried small family run businesses that have failed. And so it takes money to make money. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to have something to get started. Or if you're going to go just a more classical route, go to school, get an education, learn skills, and then be marketable. You have to be able to get in to do that. And I think that was really evident and poignant right from the beginning. Again, when we're talking about class, which is kind of the underlying theme of a lot of his movies, I say a lot of them, the three that we've watched,
Yeah.
the three I
Yeah.
know, that they get there different ways. But in this particular one, you get to know a lot more about the characters up front. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Snowpiercer, it's very, very linear, the cast system, but
Yeah.
you don't get to know much about the individuals. You're talking about the group in the rear of the train.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you are focused on a family, four unique individuals with completely different personalities and skills,
Mm-hmm.
and you juxtapose them then with the other end of that, the family that they end up working for and kind of inserting themselves into their life. That family, for example, the mother of that family has no discernible skills. She is naive. She is gullible.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter is a wonderful, nice person, but nothing. She is definitely nothing unique or she is not as intelligent as her counterpart in the other one.
Mm-hmm.
The father's a businessman, but you really don't know much about what he does. It looks electronics oriented, technology oriented, and he obviously has some level of skill or knowledge or something. But in essence, the more impressive unit as a whole is the
Mm-hmm.
one that is disadvantaged. And so that it was interesting. Becky didn't watch it with me, but she hasn't seen it either. I actually feel a little guilty because it was on my list for a very long time to watch because it won awards. Well, I should watch it.
Right.
It won awards for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But so she asked what was it about, and I told her, and she goes, "Oh, I just always assumed it was about a disease or something." I said, no, it's much more societal. She goes, "Oh, okay." I said, "It's actually a comedy." I was in the first half of the movie of this, and
Yeah.
it's even considered
Right.
a comedy by genre.
Yeah.
And it is a comedy, not hilarious, but it is
Right.
it is funny. The setup is very Ocean's 11 type. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of the con or the Sting. If I go
Mm-hmm.
back further, really enjoyed it, and it was a comedy right up until the point that it's no longer a comedy. And then it's
Yeah.
Game of Thrones Red Wedding at one point.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
quite shocking.
Yeah. That was just bonkers. The lady coming and say, "Oh, I left something in the basement," and then even just the visual of her trying to get in the cabinet, and she's like got her feet on the wall behind her and like elevated herself and like pushing. It's just like that's funny. And then to find out that her husband's been living down there for months without food and all that stuff, and just just kind of crazy. I thought that they killed the lady. I guess they ended up killing her, not on purpose
Right.
necessarily,
She ended
but
up dying.
she ended up dying. And the husband got out and was attacking everybody at the party, or at least the mom. He was trying to attack the mom because the mom of the family that's the parasite is the one that kicked his wife down the
But
stairs.
he had
But
already taken care of both of the kids.
yep, yep,
I mean,
yeah, it's crazy. And then the turning point, I think, for they talked about it at one point earlier in the film. What's that smell? That came up at one point. And then when they're hiding under the coffee table and they're, just kind of, that smell, that smell. I smell that on Mr. Kin um, and then just kind of going off on that and about the smell being so bad and all that stuff. And then
in
that's
the
the
subway.
smell that
Yeah.
he almost throws up at when he's trying to get the keys from under the guy, and that's what makes his snaps his brain, and he's like, I'm killing this guy, like, for treating me like this. It's kind of wild, but I think that's what's. I mean, even like just as I was watching, I was like, man, these folks have some amazing abilities. Like this family, they are so smart and they can be that good of a con artist. You have to be intelligent, and they just, like you said, they just did not have the
Well, but
opportunity.
and the thing is, they weren't con artists.
Right,
They
right.
seized an opportunity with the skills they had, but it wasn't like they were a family of
Of
grifters
con
who
artists, yeah, yeah,
fleeced
yeah, yeah,
people. It was just this. This is when you are given an opportunity, what will you do to exploit that opportunity? And I think the class part of it is they've got so much. I mean, they're going to give it to somebody. Like, they
yeah.
won't know the difference. They'll give it to us, and then they grow that. But then, when confronted with the wrench in their plans
Mm-hmm.
of people that are in essentially the same boat they are in, now that you have a taste of this being a little bit easier, what are you willing to do to keep it?
Mm-hmm.
What pieces of you are you willing to kill or throw away or ignore to maintain? And then at what point have you kind of lost who you were to begin with?
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I
No, it's
really,
there. Yeah.
really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah. I did too. I enjoyed watching it the second time. Having seen it a few years ago, a lot of it was still just seeing it for the first time. I think the one piece that stands out to me was when they're the flood. It's raining, and at the rich house, the sun is out in the
Yes.
teepee. Everything's fine, but they have to get out, and they're going home, and they're walking in the mud, and the water is just up to their ankles and knees, and then they get to their house and their entire house is flooded. Even her
From the
sitting, just the
sewers flooding.
visual, yeah, from the sewers flooding, and her sitting on the toilet and trying to smoke a cigarette while the sewer is just
Yeah,
like,
that was
I mean,
that was an amazing scene.
yeah,
Amazingly disgusting scene, but
right,
the power of what was happening at that moment. And then when they go back for the birthday party to be told, or have the lady on the phone, the wife, the rich wife on the phone, talking about, with all of the rain, it got all of the dust particles out of the air. It's a beautiful
right,
day. All of that rain is like, oh, it's a blessing in disguise.
yeah,
As the driver, Mr. Kim, just lost everything
yeah.
in the
And
flood.
he's caked in crap uh, because of it. Yeah, and then I think the when he tells his son, I think that becomes the hope, the air being let out of his, like they were, things were going okay. He was a little, he was, he was hurt by the comments that the husband was making about his smell, but he hadn't given up hope. And I think in that moment when everything's lost, he's laying there, he's like, you know
Don't
what?
have a plan.
There's no plans, because if you have
No.
plans, then when they fall apart, you've lost everything. So there's no point in having a plan. You
But
just
then
have
it
to
goes
go
full
with,
circle. And at the
yeah,
end, the son has
yeah,
decided the only way forward is to have a long-term, future-looking plan and something to
hmm,
aspire to with a goal. And I
yeah,
thought that was
yeah,
very. It wasn't terribly subtle, but that's okay. I don't
right,
need it to be subtle. I like the
yeah.
message. I thought
And
that was
the beautiful moment where you get to see them reunite, and even though it's in his imagination,
yes.
it
I agree.
was
That
very
was
beautiful. And seeing the wife run across the yard, I mean, it's just little things, but it's like that's this family being reunited is
and the
beautiful.
way
So
they did that was great because you didn't realize
yeah,
it. It could have just been we fast forwarded years and this happened, and then there's an ending of we find out why. No, it was this is the plan, this is the vision, and then it's him writing a
still,
letter.
yeah,
That was very powerful.
yeah, for sure. What do you give this movie? What do you rate it?
Oh, I think in the order that we've talked about them, they got better each time. I give it a low B for the first one. For Snowpiercer, probably a high B to a this one. This was a solid mid A, without a. I mean, I really did. I thought it was very well done. I think that to get the point across, especially the points about who will you step on, what will you do. There were
Mm-hmm.
some pieces of this that were really shocking, and like I said, there's not a lot of subtlety in a lot of the storyline. I don't know that keeps it from being an A plus or not. There was still a little bit that was wow, but
Mm-hmm.
I still thought that the commentary, there's a lot of meat to think about in these movies. There was a point to them, and I
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
How about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I did four stars for Snowpiercer and 4.5 for, no, 5 for Parasite. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just, and I think for me, I've mentioned this on one of the podcasts early on, but I think it's important here too. Like you said, I wanted to see it because it won awards. And I think a lot of people that watch movies, if they just go to the movies just to see whatever's cool and hip, they don't really care all the Oscars or whatever. They're just a bunch of, Hollywood people patting themselves on the back. It's like, but for me, there's something about the Oscars where, and yes, maybe it fluctuates year to year and fluctuates over time. Where maybe that, like, you think about Shawshank Redemption didn't win Best Picture, but if we redid it this year, like with
Those
that
movies
year,
that were that year, yeah, if
it
you
would have won
redrafted or
because
whatever.
yeah. But I do think that there's something to be said about, I try to watch them every year, only for the sake of opening up my eyes to, okay, what is being said? Why is this film, why does everybody think this film is great? And then that kind of, just to keep because otherwise I could just get locked into watching only the movies I want to watch all the time, and only the movies that fit in a genre that I watch. I want to make sure that I'm also pushing myself to to watch movies that are outside of my comfort zone. Hence why I wanted to do this podcast, because I'm not necessarily one that watches Korean films on a regular
No,
basis.
it probably does not show up on my Netflix.
Yeah,
Well, now it
yeah,
will. Now they will.
yeah.
Now that you might, because you watched this, you might. I agree with you that I don't know. I haven't really quantified it, but I'm betting on a given year. In that year, I probably only see two of the
Mm-hmm.
Best Picture nominees naturally. If I see
Sure.
others,
Yeah.
it's because I'm making it a point.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean I won't see them later, regardless. But just as they come out, when they come out, we go to the movies 6 or 8 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's for the big blockbuster. Have to see this in a theater kind of a movie. I do think there are a few. And had I seen Parasite without knowing anything about it and just watched it, especially
Mm-hmm.
after watching Memories of Murder
Mm-hmm.
and kind of the way we did, I honestly do believe I would have looked at that and thought this was empirically good. This would have been a high acclaim movie without knowing first that it was. And that doesn't happen to me often. I mean, I generally am not one to go tell someone, there's a movie you've never heard of and you will love it. Most of the movies I've seen that are great, I've heard of and have seen. There were only a couple of times that I've walked out of seen a movie and thought, that acting, that's Oscar worthy. I think it was Eddie Redmayne in The Theory of Everything when he played Stephen Hawking. I walked out of there going, I don't know what else you have to do to anyway. But
Yeah.
in this case, seeing where the main actor, his progression through these movies,
Yeah.
the depth of just facial expressions and posture and what he did, the tone of voice, comparing that to Memories of Murder, I realized that the characters are different.
Mm-hmm.
I get it, but it was pretty incredible. I really enjoyed his acting.
I looked up his filmography after Parasite just to kind of see what else he's done, because I know, of course, he's been in these three by this director, but he's been in like 30 something films, and some of them he's the lead, so I mean he's a fairly working actor in Korea, so it was just really cool for him to get exposure to this to the Oscars and to American films, and it's really, really fun.
Well, the combination of him and the director, they
Yeah,
go well together.
they go to yeah, they absolutely do. And I think so. I don't know that Mickey 17 is going to be an Oscar film, right? Like it doesn't look like an Oscar film,
No,
but it does look
it
like
looks a
he's
little Day After Tomorrow, Tom Cruise-ish
yeah,
in the
yeah.
preview. But again, it's about class, I think. I think
He's
it's
definitely
still
talking about class, and this guy is Robert Pattinson's character is super poor, so the only thing he can think to do is he's gonna go and sell his body to science, his living body to science, and he gets basically cloned over and over. Every time he dies from something that they're testing him on, they just reprint a new version of him, and then accidentally there's two versions of him that are around at the same time, and now all Hades breaks loose, whatever. So, but it does look like it's funny, like it's more comedic forward than, well, Parasite was funny, it was more dark, hilarious, and this looks like it's more forward on its humor, and just more of a fun blockbuster type film that he's doing as his follow up to these other more deeper comments. So yeah, it looks fun.
I think it's one thing watching not Snowpiercer, but the two Korean films. I don't watch a lot of subtitled. So Becky doesn't hear well, so we always have subtitles on, but
Mm-hmm.
it's English language with English subtitles. And she watches shows on Amazon Prime or Netflix that are foreign shows with subtitles from Spain,
Okay.
for
Yeah.
example. And she enjoys those. The subject matter is not my thing. It's not because they're foreign or not. But I did notice one thing here that I had to rewind a couple of times because I would get distracted by something in the room. The dog comes in or someone yells at me from the other room. And I realized that they've been speaking Korean. If I haven't been reading the subtitles, I have zero idea what's going on. And so it really required me to think much more about what the movie was. It was not at all distracting that they were speaking in another language and I was reading it in English. Didn't mind that at all. But there's a certain focus and mindset.
Yeah.
And one of my, just an anecdote aside, one of my pet peeves is being with someone, friends or something, and in a room, and we're watching a movie and they're on their phone. And it's their experience watching a movie, not mine. But it's a pet peeve that if we're going to talk about this movie or something afterwards, you're really not paying attention. You're not going to be part of that conversation, or you're watching it as you'll get this much. Well, it started this guy and this was his character, and then he did this and then he did this, and that's kind of the extent of it. I had to make myself pay much closer attention and maintain focus, which I actually enjoyed being forced to do that.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for agreeing to be a part of this. I know I kind of just made you do it.
The second one we've done, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I honestly, you and I talk movies all the time, so that's part of it. But I very much enjoyed it. And as with the other one we did, go look it up, people. Robin Williams. It was a great episode. You'll love it. But in doing that, and this one especially, because these are all fresh movies. The ones from Robin Williams, I had seen all but I think one of them. This one, I hadn't seen any of these, so I watched them. Full disclosure, watched them all over the last, say, 3 days. I put off all my homework until right before. But there were things that we talked about in this episode that the more we've talked about them, I feel much more confident in thinking those things. When I got through with the movie and the credits roll, 2/3 of what we talked about wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
It really, it took the back and forth and the explaining your feelings to someone to realize and kind of plumb the depths of what they were and what you were thinking. I hadn't really gotten that deep with it. So short answer is I'll do this whenever you want to, if at all possible. I really enjoy it.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Kick those kids to the curb and let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. We'll have you back sometime soon, I'm sure. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, just a reminder, you can check out all of our links at bio.site/moviesthatmakeyou. Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. But until next time, keep watching movies.